The late afternoon sun spilled gold across my office, catching on the edge of the glass desk like a spotlight on a stage I never planned to stand on. I was leaning back in my chair, the smooth silk of my blouse cool against my skin, my fingers idly spinning the gold bracelet that had once belonged to my grandmother. It was a quiet day, the kind I liked, until my phone buzzed. At first, I didn't recognize the name on the email notification. It was just another client inquiry. But as I opened it, my breath caught. Mason and Hall Consulting. The name hit me like a memory I'd spent years burying. The same firm that had laughed at my offer to help 5 years ago. The same people who told me I wasn't ready for the big leagues. The same meeting where I walked out, swallowing humiliation like bitter medicine. Now, they were here. And not just here, in the figurative sense. My assistant's voice came over the intercom a little shaky. Olivia, Mason and Hall are in the lobby. They're asking for you. I turned my chair toward the floor-to-ceiling window. From this height, the city looked small, manageable, controllable. I smoothed the sleeve of my blouse, dabbed the faintest shine from my lipstick with a tissue, and stood. It was almost funny, really. They had refused my help once. Now, they were sitting downstairs as potential clients. And I was ready for them. 5 years ago, I was 27, clutching a leather portfolio that I thought held my future. It was a rainy Tuesday in Chicago, and I had spent the night before perfecting my proposal for Mason and Hall Consulting. I'd skipped dinner, ignored calls from friends, and worked until my eyes burned, all for the chance to pitch my marketing strategy to one of the biggest firms in the city. I remember the lobby smelled faintly of citrus cleaner, the kind you find in expensive offices. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I rehearsed my opening lines in my head. My grandmother's bracelet was warm on my wrist, a reminder of her words. Never beg for a seat at the table. Build your own. But I didn't want to build my own back then. I wanted theirs. The meeting started with polite smiles, but I could feel it. The quiet dismissal in the way Mr. Hall didn't look up from his phone as I spoke, or the way Mason leaned back in his chair like he was indulging a child's school project. When I finished, I waited for questions. Instead, Mason chuckled. "You've got enthusiasm, Miss Carter," he said, "but this is big league stuff. Maybe try gaining some real experience before pitching ideas like this." My throat tightened. "With all due respect, sir, I've done my research. The numbers." Hall interrupted without looking up. "We're not in the business of mentoring startups. Thank you for coming." The room blurred. My fingers dug into the edge of my portfolio until my nails hurt. I swallowed hard, forcing a polite smile as I gathered my papers. "Thank you for your time," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. The moment I stepped outside, the wind cut through my coat, cold and sharp. I stood there on the wet sidewalk, fighting the sting in my eyes. That was the day I learned that rejection didn't just bruise your ego, it carved into your bones. I walked away from that building with my grandmother's bracelet heavy on my wrist, her words echoing louder than ever. Build your own table. That night, I made a decision. If they didn't think I belonged, I would create a place where I didn't need their approval, a place they'd eventually have to come to. They just didn't know it yet. Starting over felt like stepping into a pitch-black room with only a match to guide me. I didn't have investors. I didn't have an office. All I had was my laptop, my portfolio, and a stubborn refusal to let Mason and Hall be the last word on my potential. I rented a tiny apartment in Wicker Park, the kind where the radiator hissed all night and the bathroom mirror was cracked in one corner. My office was a second-hand desk wedged between the window and my bed. I'd wake up at 5:30 a.m., make a pot of coffee strong enough to peel paint, and spend hours cold emailing businesses who had never heard my name. Most didn't respond. Some replied with polite, "No thank you" messages. But one afternoon, a small bakery owner named Linda agreed to meet me. She was struggling to get customers through the door despite having the best croissants in the city. I offered to redesign her branding and run a local ad campaign for free. It worked. Within a month, her Saturday mornings were packed. She cried the day she told me she'd hired 2 more employees to keep up with demand. And she insisted on paying me. That was my first official client check, $750. I framed the invoice. A few months later, I met her, Camille Hayes. A powerhouse in marketing, Camille had been in the industry for 20 years and was known for mentoring women who were overlooked. She spotted me at a networking event, listened to my story, and simply said, "You've got grit. Let's put it to work." With Camille's guidance, I learned how to price my services, pitch with confidence, and build campaigns that made businesses double their revenue. I took on clients quietly, working with small and mid-sized companies, never the flashy corporate names, never in the same circles Mason and Hall traveled in. By year 2, I had hired my first assistant. By year 3, I was renting a sunlit loft downtown with exposed brick walls and a view of the river. My team grew to 6 people. We worked hard, laughed harder, and celebrated every win with champagne in paper cups. And through it all, I kept my success close to the chest. On social media, I posted just enough to look busy, but never enough to reveal my scale. No bragging, no press releases. I wasn't hiding out of fear. I was waiting. Because I knew something about people like Mason and Hall. They only notice you when they need you. And when that day came, I wanted the reveal to be unforgettable. I could see them before they saw me. Through the tinted glass of my office door, Mason was adjusting his tie, looking impatient. Hall stood stiff beside him, scanning the space with that same air of superiority I remembered. My assistant, Mia, caught my eye and mouthed, "Are you sure?" I gave her the smallest nod. "Send them in." They stepped inside and slowed. That always happens. People don't expect my office to feel like this. Open, warm, elegant. The white oak floors gleamed in the afternoon light, framed by tall windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. A large abstract painting, my first splurge, hung behind my desk. Shelves lined one wall, filled with books, framed photos, and mementos from campaigns we'd run. "This is quite a space," Mason said, his gaze flicking from the leather chairs to the sleek glass desk. "Thank you." I gestured toward the chairs opposite mine. "Please sit." Hall cleared his throat. "We appreciate you making time for us, Miss Carter. We've been following your work." My brows lifted. "Have you?" "Yes," Mason jumped in. "We've heard good things. Your agency's results speak for themselves. We're looking for someone to handle a major rebranding for a client of ours, and your team seems like a perfect fit." There it was, the pitch. Except this time, I was the one holding the decision. I leaned back, resting my hand casually on my grandmother's bracelet. "Interesting. I didn't realize Mason and Hall worked with agencies like mine. Last I remember, you preferred the big leagues." Mason's mouth twitched, a faint flash of recognition in his eyes. Hall shifted uncomfortably. "You remember our meeting," Hall said slowly. "Oh, I do," I replied, keeping my voice smooth. "I remember every detail. The citrus cleaner in your lobby. The way Mr. Hall didn't look up from his phone. The way Mr. Mason suggested I get real experience before pitching ideas." Silence. Mia appeared at the door with a fresh pot of coffee, sensing the tension but saying nothing as she poured. I let the moment stretch, watching them take in the reality of where they were sitting, in my office, asking for my help. Finally, Mason cleared his throat. "Well, clearly you've built something impressive. We'd like to put the past aside and focus on the opportunity in front of us." I smiled, not cruelly, but knowingly. "The past is what brought us here, Mr. Mason. Without it, you wouldn't be sitting across from me." Hall glanced around again, his voice softer. "So, you own this agency?" "Yes," I said, meeting his gaze. "I built it from the ground up. No big league connections. Just clients who believed in me. And results." The color in Mason's face deepened. Hall gave a short nod, almost respectful. For a moment, I let the silence speak for me. Outside, the city buzzed, but in here, the air was thick with the shift in power. They had refused my help once. Now, they were in my office, waiting for my terms. And I intended to make them worth my while. I folded my hands on the desk and let them wait a beat longer. It's a small tactic, but silence has weight, and I'd learned to let it work for me. "All right," I said finally. "If we're going to work together, There are a few non-negotiables. Mason straightened, the old reflex of wanting to be in control flickering across his face. Hall just nodded warily. First, I continued, we do things my way. No last-minute changes to the strategy without consulting my team. I don't work for you. I work with you. If that's a problem, we're done before we start. Hall gave a stiff nod. Mason hesitated, then said, understood. Second, I said, leaning forward slightly, your client will be billed at my premium rate, and so will you, for the additional consulting. That means no discount, no special favors, and payment in full before the campaign launches. I could see the calculation in Mason's eyes. He didn't like it, but he needed me. Agreed. I let a small smile curl at the corner of my lips. Third, and this one's personal. You'll put my agency's name front and center in all your promotional materials. No burying it in fine print. If I'm doing the work, the world will know who made it happen. Hall shifted in his chair. That's unusual. So, is you walking into my office after turning me away 5 years ago? I replied calmly. He didn't argue. Finally, I said, my tone softening just a fraction, you'll hire 2 interns from underrepresented backgrounds, and you'll pay them a living wage. I'll even send you candidates. I don't care if you put them on this project or another, but you'll give them the opportunities one didn't have when I came to you. That one landed differently. Mason looked away. Hall exhaled slowly. That's fair, Hall admitted. It's more than fair, I said. It's how you fix the culture you've been part of. The room went still. I didn't need to raise my voice. The message was already sitting heavy between us. Mason finally leaned forward, elbows on his knees. We'll meet your terms. Good, I said, rising from my chair. Mia will draft the agreement by tomorrow. If you're serious, sign it. If not, well, you know where the door is. They both stood. Mason extended his hand, and for a moment, I considered refusing it. But I didn't. I shook it, firm and unflinching, because this wasn't about old grudges anymore. This was about control, and I had it now. As they left, I caught their reflection in the glass door. 2 men who had once underestimated me now walking out as my clients. It was poetic. 2 months later, I was standing at the back of a crowded launch event for the rebranding campaign. The client's new image was bold, fresh, and already generating buzz online. Mason and Hall had followed every one of my terms, even the intern program. I spotted them across the room, introducing their 2 new hires, a young Latina woman and a Black college senior, both smiling and confident. For the first time, I saw Mason listening instead of talking. Hall actually laughed at something one of them said. It was small, but it was a start. Camille appeared beside me, handing me a glass of champagne. They've changed, she murmured. I took a sip, the bubbles crisp on my tongue. Maybe, I said. Or maybe they're just learning what it feels like to be on the other side. We clinked glasses. After the speeches and photos, Mason approached me. Olivia, he began, almost hesitant, I owe you an apology. We were wrong about you back then. I studied him for a moment. He wasn't used to saying those words. Yes, I said simply. You were. And then I smiled, not to ease his guilt, but because I meant it when I added, but I'm glad you came to me anyway. Later that night, back in my office, I set my champagne glass on the desk and opened the top drawer. Inside was my grandmother's gold bracelet, the one I'd worn the day they'd turned me away. I slid it on, feeling its familiar weight. Her voice came back to me, warm and steady. Never beg for a seat at the table. Build your own. I glanced out at the city skyline, the lights shimmering like possibilities. I had built my own table, and tonight, the people who once refused me had pulled up a chair. But the best part wasn't the victory. It was knowing I'd done it without becoming bitter, without letting their rejection define me. I'd built something worth respecting, and in the end, respect was the one thing they could never refuse. I leaned back in my chair, letting the quiet fill the room. The night was mine, the future wide open. Final voiceover line. They refused my help once. Now, they're my clients, and that's not revenge. That's growth.